book, Do You Have Kids? Life When the Answer is No. Kate Kaufmann shows readers how to create a life outside the mainstream of motherhood, something I can identify with. We're thrilled to have her join us here on Big Blend Radio's Authors Happy Hour show today, and I encourage you to go to her website, katekaufmann.com, and that's KAUFMANN.com. I always just like to promote that I can actually spell. But anyway, katekaufmann.com. It's got an awesome blog. Of course, go get the book. It's out now through She Writes Press. You can get it on Amazon, all those great places. But again, go to her website. But we want to welcome you, Kate. How are you?
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for spelling my name with the second N.
I knew that it had to happen. See,
yeah.
I knew that. But listen, thank you for writing this book because it was actually interesting. The beginning of the year, we were interviewed on another show, and it was about champagne and challenges and conquering life and all these things. And it ended up in this conversation that suddenly I was like, well, I chose when I was 17 years old never to have a child, and the lady said who was interviewing us said, thank you for even sharing that because most people don't even want to discuss that. And then when I saw your book and started reading it, I'm like, my gosh, you put a lot of equity, like sweat equity research into this and getting these stories from people everywhere. And so thank you.
Well, my pleasure, and I have to say it has been an utter joy to do that equity sweating work that you referred to. Because I got to dive deep and go and talk to people like us who for so many different reasons didn't have children and how it has impacted their lives.
Right. I mean, and it's a different thing. I mean, when I was in high school in South Africa, and we're talking, I don't know, 20-something years ago.
Hello.
I can't add, I'm in my mid-40s, everyone. It's happening. And I remember everyone was going off to be married. Some were pregnant, some, engaged. I mean, it was like, this is
huge.
how your life will be. And I'd already signed up on this, like, this is what my life's going to be. I wanted to go actually be a photojournalist in wars. But anyway, that's a different story.
Ew.
But it's still about doing the same thing I'm doing now at the end of the day is that get that information out there. And it was very difficult to be in that area, like it's the same thing as like, well, when you're going to get a husband, and I'm not a lesbian, and I've got friends who are lesbian and they have children, and people think I'm a lesbian because I don't have a child. It's all of that stuff, and you cover it all in your book. And it's just like why aren't you like that? And I have to keep explaining to people why. So can I just give them your book now?
Absolutely. That's a perfect use for it. I have so many women specifically women, but men too, who are saying, I'm giving this to my parents as a way to help them have a window into what my world might be like. Because we think it's like a simple thumbs up, thumbs down, but parents, it's a full range of reasons why people become parents, and it's a full range of reasons why people end up not being parents, whether you choose it or it's something like with me that happens. But in the end, you either have kids or you don't have kids. And then we have a lot in common. And then between the two statuses, if you will, there's so many interdependencies and interesting dynamics that we can explore and know each other better.
Even before you talk about having children, for some of us, there's the conversation of, I remember in my childhood, when are you going to get married? When? You're like, and it's almost like a race to get married before you get pregnant, just in case you might be a little on the loose side or whatever it is that makes your parents and your grandparents especially. I found grandparents to be way more adamant about when are you going to get married? And then as soon as you get married, they give you like your honeymoon, and then, are you pregnant yet? Are you pregnant yet? And, it's like, really? And I might want to do something totally different with my life, or I might not. But they're in it. It's almost like they're living their life through you instead of their own to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. And then also, what's interesting to your grandparents, perhaps, is that the tables have now tipped just slightly in favor of having the child first and then marrying. More than 50%.
Now they're like, no, now you got to get married.
Yeah,
ha.
Exactly. Well, but then, it used to be like, oh, if you're not married by, 15, you're a spinster, kind of thing. I mean, way back when. But then your story too, of really wanting a child, and so many who do. I think that's also a very difficult one because there's a weird thing that society does to people. There's the guilt, the shame that now we're going to look at you different. You know what I mean? And it's like it's just an odd thing to live through and not easy, right? And you've definitely talked to not only having to go through that yourself, but talked to a lot of women who went through that. And I'm glad you brought up men because I think men, they're part of this too,
Yes. And what's interesting is the very first time they studied attitudes about particularly women who haven't had kids was in the late 70s, and they recently did an update on that study and found it has not changed one bit. And so a mother, if you say someone's a mother, most often they will elicit feelings of admiration. If you say you're a woman who wanted kids and it didn't happen for whatever reason, you most often elicit pity, and I can speak to that. And if you chose not to have kids, it's a mixture of envy and disdain. And it's like, whoa, those are all pretty intense emotions. And I think we're more nuanced than that. And it points out the fact that we don't understand each other well.
Yeah, and I think it's also, we don't understand each other well, but I think when, like what you've done with, creating this book and its stories, it's people's, this is what happened with me, this is how my life has changed, I think that really opens up a dialogue, because people can find themselves in a story, they can they can connect in some way. So I think that's important. But I think we've also changed. Don't you think in a way, like now we have completely... We're in a different place now with what people want to do with their bodies or not,
I think we are, and I think that there's that scope of choices and options, and I would add life circumstances that come to bear. Like there's a woman that I talked to in her 60s, and she, starting from age 8, was caring for her brother who was injured in an accident, and then she and her mother were caring for her grandmother who had dementia, and then she ended up caring for her mother who just passed away at age 103. And so this woman has never married, and she is now, for the first time in her life since age 8, it's her life. So now she has all these choices that she's never had before.
That's wild. And so there's this interesting freedom that comes with it, right? It's like the kids have and for her, I mean that's epic. And there's also the change that everyone goes through. There's I'm friends with my high school friends were friends, and then they have a child, and then you don't have one, you don't get married, so therefore now you're not the part of the pairing factor anymore. Now you've been kicked out of the herd.
But because you're
still there, but now you're a threat.
You're a threat.
There's like this weird
woman of the same age in the same friend group, and everybody goes,
There's a weird thing if you're not a couple. And everybody has this thing where couples have to date couples or something.
I think there's
and all that sorting out, that time in the beginning when we're all kind of like, okay, what's your path going to be? What's your path going to be? That time is all that charged electric time. And then I think because of that, that frizziness, I'm flapping my hands all over the place. But after that time, when it kind of becomes clear, that's when we don't have the way in anymore because we're already kind of polarized unless we put really intentions to keeping those connections. And it happens in families all the time, too.
That's true.
That's so
true.
true.
That's true too. And it even happens like within the families where, okay, a new child comes in. That's it. Now the other child feels it's that's been there first
jealousy.
feels jealous. So there's this balance, and it is that communication. I think communication is the biggest thing. That's so important to discuss feelings, and I think that's a difficult thing. People may have to put their cell phone down, don't you think, to get that to happen?
Yes, and actually listen and watch and go into territory that is unfamiliar. Absolutely. It's a risk-taking. Somebody always has to go first.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing, when you think back to the role of women in society, you were, if you did not have children, almost considered like you did not live up to your role as a woman. So, I think back to people like Annie Oakley and her shotgun riding a horse. I'm not sure whether she had children or not, but obviously she had a different life plan than what everybody thought she should have. And I know that kind of comes from women being second class to men for a long time. Now things are changing, and they're changing so fast. I think men are like, their heads are spinning like, what did we do wrong? What? And and now women are like, hey, whoa, we do have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And we can make it now, and we can stick by it and not be assumed if you didn't have a child that you were barren, assumed if you didn't have a child that you're a lesbian, assumed that you didn't have a child, there's something weird and wrong with you. Like, Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love all the stereotypes and how easily they're rolling off of your tongue. Because when we step back from that, one of the things that I will say when someone says, oh, do you have kids? I go, no. Who have you known that doesn't have kids? And almost inevitably they wait for a second, and then they say, oh, my favorite teacher at school. Oh, the couple down the street. Oh, there was that priest that mattered in my life. And it just goes on and on with people who are admired. And yet somehow that connection phrase when we talk about it in the more general instead of the specific. So that was another one of my goals, is to say, here's real people using, unless they're tagged with it, their real names to tell you what their real lives and attitudes are like.
Exactly. It's really important. I mean, because I know for me, I've always had this life plan. It's always changed because that's life, The river changes and goes a different course, but it's the same line, same goal. And when I hit my 30s, it was very interesting because, you have relationships and then they're serious, and then all of a sudden the kid thing happens, and you're like, dude, do you really have to have one? Apparently they do, some of them, and all of a sudden, like, you can have this immense love for each other, and that one thing can break up that whole, it's bizarre. Yeah. Like, it's a really weird thing to me that there's like, that's where common love kind of, you can still love each other forever, but that one thing, that child,
it's a deal breaker,
wants to be there for somebody else, but not me. But for somebody else, that's important. And then I go, well, what happens when you marry someone with the intent of that, and it doesn't happen? And you know about that. It's that relationship part, I think, is really hard on people.
I think you're absolutely right. And I heard something just the other day that 45% of pregnancies are unplanned. And so there's a whole mind adjustment that happens in a relatively short period of time, right? And then all of a sudden people are thrust into, for whether going along with it or having some ambivalence, into this whole new role. And for those of us who don't have kids, there's not all that suddenness. We don't have that. More people end up not having kids just because they kept kicking the decision down the road, and then it timed out. And you look at assisted reproduction, and it's a pretty small percentage, a sadly small percentage of those procedures that are successful. So it's just so varied.
And then there's also, so some folks may adopt, but your body, so that's something you cover in your book, which I think is really important, about what happens to those of us who do not bear a child, actually physically bear a child. So there's adopting a child, and love can be love, right? But there is something that is different in our bodies. Nancy and I have talked about that as I hit my 40s, what happened with her, what is happening with me, and it ain't the same. And I'm like, well, I didn't have a kid, you did. And she's like, so? But I'm like, it is different. There's something different that is going on. That's all I'm going to say.
We call it the use it or lose it.
Yeah, but you have a whole chapter. That's a whole chapter in the book is use it or lose it. And it's a scary thing. It's a scary
thing.
Use it
or lose it.
And,
that's where nature steps in and goes, okay, you're not using that, so bye-bye.
But that's a scary, real thing, isn't it?
Not really. It's funny.
No, it's not funny. It's real. It's real. I know a lot of people that have gone through cancer and things like that. And
that's not how I mean it.
No, but you have a whole chapter dedicated to this, Kate, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I'm curious about some of those other physical differences that go along with it. Like I talked to a massage therapist. This didn't make it into the book, but she said the moment she puts her hands on a client, she can, if it's a woman, she can tell if they've had a child or not. And I thought, wow, fascinating. That's so interesting. But then when you haven't had kids, we're at 2 to 3 times greater risk of breast, ovarian, and uterine cancer, which
weird.
Diving into that, that's like, we must get checked.
That's weird. Why would that be?
See, but now here's the thing. Part of the reason I don't have a child is I'm scared as heck as a doctor. Now you're sending me there.
No, maybe it's just every time
proactively.
but maybe when you consciously, nature does what nature does, and nature is a big force, okay? So when you step outside of what nature wants or pushes for, which is always to keep species going, they don't look at graphs. Nature just does nature. So when you step outside that, there's going to be consequences, and whether they're good or bad, that's, a personal take on it. But maybe stepping outside of nature does have, our bodies, let's just say technology is moving faster than our bodies can adjust to differences, because we've evolved over hundreds of years. So maybe when we don't do what nature expects, things happen. I don't know. It's a big question.
Well, and the medical community doesn't know for sure either. I mean, there's a whole bunch of theories flying around. Yeah.
Wow. It's an interesting time to be here.
I mean, nature
and be part of it.
Nature always works on the idea that male are dominant,
and
then you must procreate to keep the system going. That's nature right there.
It's interesting. It's also interesting. Did you ever feel anything on the political thing? Like, there's a whole political side of this. There's a religious side. I think there's also a political side of it about having kids. I mean, look at the royalties.
I agree, and there's economics. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all man-made. That's not nature.
Right. But that's what I'm
man-made.
saying. But now it's still relevant, right?
Yeah,
what happens,
sure.
like when, if the royal family in England, if, Prince Harry doesn't have a child, then what happens? What would happen? What would happen?
His cousin
would that
takes
be
over.
like a big no-no? So there's that whole. It's just a.
But that's man-made.
But that's the whole
and
thing.
It's a no-no. It's a no-no according to whom. Like we all think that there's some like panel that's giving the edicts on what is. Where I think being human is much more complex than that.
I agree. So I do want to ask you
this. None of us get the whole enchilada. Yeah.
I just want to know what it's like to do you have fun riding a tractor? Are you still farming? I want to know. I have to ask. It's got nothing to do with anything, but I have to.
Well, I need to give your listeners just a little context for that. Is after my ex-husband and I stopped trying to have kids, we thought, okay, wait a minute, we're doing these killer jobs and saving all this money for college educations, but hold on, we're not going to have kids. And so we made a complete change in lifestyle and moved to the country and raised some sheep, and we had a tractor, and it was a blast driving a tractor. I'm actually quite good at it.
See?
I want to do a backhoe next time. Yeah.
See, but that's the thing, that there's a different thing that happens. You can change your life. You go, okay, well, this part isn't happening, but I'm going to do this. You can get more involved in nonprofits and charity work. There's travel. There's all these different experiences that you can have without having a child. There's like you give people inspiration and thought to move forward. That's what I really love about your book. It's down to earth, real, because it's real stories, but there's also this you can move forward, with this.
And there's an underlying soulfulness that I found in most every person that I've talked to, and I am including men here, where there's a reflection on what is my purpose and how do I participate in this environment. And something that I have found really interesting is that none of the people I talked to said that people should not have kids. There was complete support for someone making the decision to become a parent. And yet there in some sectors there's real judgment, and sometimes shamefully so, for people who either can't or won't for whatever reason. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And I really hope that goes away, because
I think that's tied to religion a lot.
There's a religion side, and I think that we are shifting. I mean, look, we're bigger than what we used to be as a actual living creature. Bigger, we're different. I think our fingers and our little toes are going to fall off, but our thumbs are going to be attached to a cell phone permanently at some point. I don't know.
And our feet are way bigger.
Yeah, one day we're going to wake up and we're all going to have webbed feet. I don't know, but we have changed, and I think we're always in this state of evolution and change. And now I'm going to get weird emails about that, but that I think that we are always changing, and our bodies are always in this changing form, and then it's just never going to be 100% clear. So we just have to move forward with our lives and live them as best as we can and as nice as we can, That's how I feel.
And I think it's called live and let live.
Yeah.
That's a very simple saying. Live and let live. You live how you want to live, and let other people live how they want to live, unless you're trying to kill each other, then you should all stop. But just live and let live.
Take a look at what each other has to offer. That's the thing that I like. Instead of talking about independence and dependence, we have so much richness in the in-between place, the interdependence, like when kids leave home to go to college and there's the empty nest. Well, which ones of your friends don't have kids? Because they're the experts on that. And conversely, when it comes to caring for children, if you were the youngest kid in your family and you don't have kids, you have no idea. I talked to 3 different contrasting stepmoms, and it really depended a lot on what their birth order was, as well as when they came into the household with kids, as to how well that all worked out. I mean, it's fascinating.
It is. It really is. I wish I had your book earlier in life. It would have helped me with some things, and it still does help me. So I want you to know that, and I really appreciate it, because there were just things that I think that everything was so hush hush, and coming to America, coming back to my birthland here, has been a little bit more liberating in some ways. In some ways, Africa's a little bit more freer. I can't even explain that without going into a whole other radio show, but there's definitely, I think young women, young men need to read this, absolutely, because men go through this too. Some men don't want kids. Some men don't, and some men don't also understand what it's like for the partner, and it's just a really important book, and the sooner people can get it, the better. So that's all I have to say. Send it out to everybody. Yeah, everyone needs to have this. I think the college kids need to have it in their hands. I really do, because it helps them understand the other side, you know?
Well, when I hear younger women saying, you know, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to have kids, whether it's for a physical reason or by choice, then they say, the next thing out that they say is, and I'm having a really hard time picturing what the next 50, 60 years of my life looks like. It's like, well, here, go to your non-grandmother or your non-mother and find out, because it's all laid out all the way through to how you look at your end of life and what your legacy is. It's beautiful. And I wish I had this book before. Yeah. And that's why I wrote it. And I will tell you, I learn something every single time I read this book. And when I read it now for readings, oh my God, it's just, I watch these light bulbs and flickers and smiles and sadness go on, and it just warms my heart. It's the most fulfilling thing I've done.
I know. I saw that you also do a lot of speaking engagements, book club conversations, which I think is awesome. And I think also there's a whole movement of people not that are choosing to not have children. There's like this kind of where I was as a 17-year-old girl going, I don't want this in my life. I want this, and you know, and it's just I've always pretty much had people look at me weird that way, and it's like I'm not a mean person. I just want to say that I'm not. I look at what I do in my life is about, you know, making sure parks are protected and funded, and that there's green space for the youth. And I don't have time to do anything other than what we do. And if I'm helping not pave up the greenery, but pave the way for these places to stay there, then I feel like I'm a parent to the kids that I don't even know. We go to parks, I look at kids and see how happy they are. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. I'm not mean. You know, sometimes I am. Don't double cross me, man. But you know what I mean? It's like, so to me, I think there's this thing of there's a lot of people now that are looking at the world with climate change and all these issues that are also just going, I'm not doing this now. I'm scared to have a child now, or financially can't do it. And people they're making these decisions now when 20, 40 years ago, it was you're supposed to do this and do that, whether or not you had the money.
Well, we have choices now.
Yeah, we have
choices.
Yeah, that's why.
So you're saying you have a conscious choice and you're making it, instead of we're just reacting to whatever nature
society,
throws, what nature and society throws at. Just do the expected, and it's interesting whenever somebody does the unexpected. The people who live their lives by doing the expected are like, whoa. Who gave you the right to do the unexpected? You know, and that's on them, not on you.
Well, and I think it's beautiful the way you characterize really mothering or parenting as a verb. You do a beautiful job of that. And then I was struck earlier in the conversation about, you know, never being a grandmother. Well, when you look at it as being a verb, I've had so many women who are in that situation saying, wow, I don't know how to think about this. I don't know how to put it in context because it's what I expected, just like you said. And it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. This is a completely different kind of not grandmothering, and I get to have some of that defining in a way that works for me that some of my friends who are grandmothers don't. But you get to learn that from the younger generation, and it's so, as long as we can talk about it, get it some air around it in a respectful and open-hearted and curious way, we've gone a far bit to bringing everything together.
I think with your book it really helps. I'm so pleased about it. But are you ready, Kate, to play the happy hour game? Because it's time to ring the happy hour bell. I love this bell. So, Kate, if you could spend happy hour with anyone on Earth or anywhere, I don't care if it's fictional, the person's alive or passed on, but you're going to spend happy hour with someone that you want to, anywhere in the world, who would it be, where would it be, and what are you going to enjoy for happy hour? It could be alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Everyone's got their choice there.
Well, that is a really interesting question, and I had to do a big, pageant in order to figure out who that person would be. And I settled on my maternal grandmother, who died when I was 3 months old, because I've been told my whole life, "Oh my God, you're just like her, you're just like her." And so I want to meet her. I want to talk to her in maybe my mom's childhood home, because my mom was very secretive. So I want to be in that home, but I want to talk to her about being a capable, unconventional woman at the turn of the century. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to share with her. I don't know if she drank or not, but I come from Oregon. I spent a lot of time in the Willamette Valley, and I'm going to share with her some of my very favorite Pinot Gris, which is made by Ponzi, and we're going to have a lovely conversation. And I have no idea where it would go.
Well, we just covered Ponzi Winery, I just want to say, in our Big Blend Radio and TV magazine that's out now, the current one. Go check it out. We just did a whole feature on Willamette wines. And and we haven't been there, but one of our travel writers, Linda Kassam, went there. And all I can say is what's going on in Oregon and the Tualatin Valley, sustainability and everything. So I want to come hang out with you and your grandma and drink Ponzi's Pinot.
I think you better, and you better call me.
Okay, we'll do it. When we get up your way, we will, for sure, on our Love Your Park tour.
Perfect.
I mean, wine is all part of, you have to have wine in a park and, nice setting. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for writing the book. We're going to play a song for you before our next guest joins us here. We love to dedicate music, and this song is called Lost on the Same Street. It's one of my most favorite songs. And it's because it's like, when we're all together in the same thing, but we're lost on the same path, And I just kind of feel like that's how it is for a lot of us when
when you don't do the expected.
When you don't do the expected, or the expected doesn't work, right?
Well, thanks for an awesome conversation. You guys are great.
Thank you so much.
You.
And everyone, again, the book is Do You Have Kids? Life When the Answer is No. It's by Kate Kaufmann. Again, her website is KateKaufmann.com. That's KaufMann, KateKaufmann.com. And, of course, you can get it on Amazon, all those places. But I encourage you to go to Kate's website because she's got an awesome blog. And also you can see her speaking engagements. And, if that's something that you want in your community, call her or connect with her on her website. And also we want to thank JKS Communications for partnering with us to have these awesome author happy hour shows. They're always so much fun. So here it is, Lost on the Same Street, and this is by the Dave Fitzpatrick Band from their album Parachutes in Hurricanes, and they're based out in Milwaukee. So here it is. Thanks so much, Kate. Thanks for joining us.
Everybody's lost on the same street. Everybody's lost on the same street. Please take the seat.